Brielle Summers slammed open the polished glass doors of the Frost Tech boardroom like she owned the place, even though she didn't even have a visitor's badge. "Excuse me, are you all seriously discussing the color of the new app logo while your AI software is flagging false fraud alerts and freezing people's accounts?" Her voice echoed through the sleek, silent conference room. 12 suited men and women turned at once, stunned. Phones were lowered. Pens paused mid-scribble, and at the head of the long obsidian table, one man slowly turned his chair, his eyes locking right on her. He was younger than she thought a CEO would be. Late 30s, maybe. Sharp jawline, dark hair swept back like it never dared to fall out of place, and an expensive-looking watch peeking under his tailored sleeve. His expression was unreadable, but his blue eyes were definitely not boring. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low but cutting. "I'm the person who's been emailing your customer support team every day for 2 weeks trying to get my father's small business account unfrozen. And no one has responded," she said, chin high. "So I figured it was time to bring the issue to the people making the decisions." There was a long pause. You could practically hear the boardroom's oxygen snap with tension. The man didn't blink. "Everyone out." "What?" one of the executives asked. I said, "Everyone out." His voice carried weight like this was his kingdom, and no one questioned the king. The room emptied fast. Brielle's heart pounded, but she didn't move. She wasn't afraid of boardrooms. She wasn't afraid of rich men in suits. She just hadn't expected to barge in on the CEO himself. Once the last door closed, he stood slowly and walked toward her. "Your name?" "Brielle Summers," he nodded. "Walter Finch, of course. Walter Finch. The billionaire tech founder behind Frost Tech, the man who turned a garage algorithm into one of the largest fintech empires in the country. The man who now stood in front of her with an unreadable gaze and the kind of control that made your skin prickle. "You could have filed a formal complaint." "I did, 3 times. And barging into my boardroom was your next logical step. It was either that or handcuff myself to your lobby desk." He actually laughed just once, a short huff of amusement that softened his face for half a second. "Sit," he said. "I'm not sit." Brielle sat. He walked to a console in the wall, tapped something on a screen, and then turned back to her. "Give me your father's business name," she told him. "Give me the case number." She gave that too and watched as he pulled up files on the room's massive built-in screen. She couldn't read them from where she sat, but his eyes moved fast, scanning. His expression shifted, and then he tapped a button and picked up a phone. "Get legal on the line." "Now, yes, I'm serious," he hung up, turned to her. "You were right. The AI flagged a pattern that wasn't fraud. It froze the account and the override failed. That's on us. I'm sorry," she blinked. "You're apologizing. I'm fixing it. The money will be released today." "I'll personally call your father." Brielle stared at him. "Why are you doing this?" He tilted his head. "Because you were brave enough to walk in here and tell me the truth. Most people don't," she swallowed. "Thank you." He nodded once, then walked to the door. She stood slowly, unsure if she was supposed to leave now, but before she could turn to go, he looked at her again. "Brielle," he said. "Yeah, you're not boring." Then he walked back into the boardroom like he hadn't just flipped her whole world upside down. 2 days later, a black Lincoln pulled up in front of Brielle's father's bakery. She was frosting cupcakes when the door opened and a man in a charcoal suit stepped in, Walter Finch. "What are you doing here?" she asked, wiping buttercream off her hands. "I told your father I'd stop by to apologize in person." Her dad, Peter, peeked out from the kitchen, eyes wide. "Wait, is that the guy?" "That's the guy," Brielle muttered. Walter stepped forward. "Mr. Summers, I'm sorry for the trouble our system caused. I've also arranged for 2 years of free services, including a dedicated business support manager." Her dad blinked. "That's very generous." Walter held out a hand. "You bake, I build tech, but we're both in the business of trust." "You deserve better." After a few awkward moments and a lot of stammering from her dad, Walter turned to Brielle again. "Coffee," she frowned. "Are you asking me out?" "I'm asking for coffee." "I frost cupcakes. You run billion-dollar boardrooms." "I'm aware." She studied him for a second. "Fine, but I picked the place." "Deal." The coffee shop was tiny, loud, and definitely not the kind of place someone like him belonged, But he didn't complain. He asked questions, real ones, about her father's bakery, about why she left her marketing job 2 years ago, about the nonprofit work she'd started with her best friend, helping women re-enter the workforce. "So you're not just a cupcake decorator," he said. "Nope, I'm a part-time chaos solver and full-time coffee drinker." He laughed again, this time a real one. It lit his face, made the hard edges soften. "You're not what I expected," he said. "Good." They sat for 2 hours. He didn't check his phone once. When he walked her back to her car, he paused. "I have a charity gala next weekend. You'd like it. It's not stuffy. Live music, rooftop venue." "Come with me?" She stared at him. "Are you asking me on a date or offering me a business networking opportunity?" His lips curved slightly. "Can't it be both?" She hesitated. She should have said no. But something about the way he looked at her, like she challenged him, like she surprised him, made her pulse skip. "I'll think about it." She didn't think long. The gala was held at the top of the Frost Tech Tower, and when she stepped out of the elevator, every head turned. She wore a fitted navy dress, heels she hadn't dusted off in years, and a necklace her mom had left her. Walter was already there, a glass of champagne in his hand, talking to a senator. But the second he saw her, he stopped mid-sentence. He walked over slowly. "You came, you invited me, you look." He blinked once. "Incredible," she tried not to blush. Failed. The night passed in a blur of laughter, dancing, and whispered conversations. He stayed close to her the whole time, never once making her feel like she didn't belong. And when the rooftop lights dimmed and the band played their final song, he pulled her into his arms. "I don't usually do this," he said quietly. "What, dance? Feel this drawn to someone?" She looked up at him, heartbeat thudding. "You barely know me." "I know enough." She could have pulled away, should have, but she didn't. Instead, as the stars twinkled overhead and the city pulsed below them, she let herself lean into the moment, into him, and when he kissed her, it didn't feel like the beginning of something reckless. It felt like the beginning of everything. The air in Walter's penthouse was unusually still. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the city skyline, barely noticing the glass of scotch in his hand. Midtown lights blinked in the distance, but his thoughts were nowhere near them. He hadn't expected her to show up at the gala, and he definitely hadn't expected to feel off balance ever since. He didn't like unpredictability. That was why he had systems, strategies, contingency plans. But Brielle Summers had walked into his life like a storm, unapologetic, unfiltered, and absolutely uninterested in impressing anyone. He downed the rest of the scotch and tossed the glass onto the bar tray. It clinked too loudly in the quiet. The doorbell rang. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened it, his assistant, Devin, stood there holding a slim folder. "Sorry to come up this late, but you said to hand this to you the second it came in." Walter took it and flipped through the pages fast. Legal summaries, internal memos. He got to the last sheet and frowned. "You're sure this is accurate?" Devin nodded. "Triple-checked. Also, the board wants to meet again next week. They're still pushing for the new product launch, even though you wanted to delay it." Walter closed the folder. "Let them push. You're not going to cave." "I've never caved before." Devin gave a short nod, then hesitated. "By the way, the woman you brought to the gala," Walter cut him off with a look. "That's not your business." Devin's eyes widened slightly, but he backed off. After the door closed again, Walter walked to the sleek black piano in the corner of the room. He hadn't played since college, but tonight the keys pulled at him. He sat, let his fingers hover for a moment, then pressed down. Notes filled the air, hesitant at first, then steadier. It was a piece his mother used to play. Back when things were simpler, he didn't know what Brielle Summers wanted from him. Maybe nothing, but he knew one thing: he wanted to see her again, not just in cocktail dresses and rooftop lights. He wanted to see her when her hair was a mess and she was telling him he was wrong again. He wanted to know what made her stay up at night and what kind of music she put on when she baked alone. He wanted to know her, and that terrified him more than any hostile takeover ever had. Brielle stood behind the bakery counter the next morning, sorting invoices and trying to keep her breathing steady. She hadn't planned on dancing with a billionaire or letting him kiss her beneath rooftop lanterns. That wasn't her life. She had rent to cover, payroll to make, and a father who still refused to install a digital register. But she couldn't stop thinking about that night, the way Walter had looked at her like she was the only person in the room. The quiet way he'd held her hand when no one was watching. The vulnerability that had flickered so fast she might have imagined it when he'd admitted he didn't normally let people in. She wasn't a fool. She knew men like him didn't do relationships. They did acquisitions, control, clean exits, but still, the bell over the door jingled. She looked up, expecting one of their regulars. Instead, a tall woman in a crisp navy blazer strode in, clutching a leather portfolio. "Brielle Summers?" "Yes, I'm here on behalf of Mr. Finch." Brielle blinked. "Okay. He's asked me to deliver this." The woman opened the portfolio and handed over a thick envelope. "It's a proposal." Brielle opened it slowly. The papers inside weren't legal documents, they were plans. Full-color mock-ups of a partnership between Frost Tech's small business division and her nonprofit, complete with funding proposals and platform integration. "He's offering this to us. He believes in your mission. He wants to see it grow." Brielle stared at the breakdowns. The numbers were staggering. It wasn't just support, it was investment, infrastructure, a full team. "This is too much." The woman gave a faint smile. "He doesn't think so." After she left, Brielle sank onto the bench behind the register, the papers still clutched in her hands. Why would he do this? He didn't owe her anything. She'd already gotten her father's account fixed. They danced, sure, but that didn't mean her phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. "Brielle." Walter's voice was low, steady. "I didn't expect a portfolio handoff in the middle of my morning shift," she said. "I wanted you to see I'm serious, about what you're doing, about helping. And not about impressing me with flashy partnerships. I could have signed a check. I didn't. I want to build something with you." She went quiet. "I know it's a lot," he added, "but I meant what I said. You're not like anyone I've met. Maybe that's the problem." He was silent for a beat. "I can meet you halfway, but you'll have to let me." She looked at the papers again, the numbers. "The reach. I need time. You've got it." Later that week, she met him at a quiet art exhibit downtown. Not a gala, not a press event, just the two of them, walking among sculptures and abstract canvases. "You like this?" she asked, tilting her head at a piece that looked like a pile of tangled wires. "No," he said, "but I like watching you try to figure it out." She laughed before she could stop herself. The night was different, quieter, no tuxes, no champagne. Just jeans, sneakers, and conversation. He told her about growing up in Boston. About how he used to sneak into the MIT library just to read code books before he was even accepted. About the first time his software crashed and cost him everything and how he'd rebuilt from scratch. She listened, surprised by how open he was, how much he'd risked, how little of it had ever been about money, and when he asked her what she'd do with $1 million if there were no strings attached, she didn't hesitate. "I'd open a second bakery. One in a neighborhood most investors avoid. I'd hire women who have been turned away everywhere else. Give them something steady. Give them a reason to believe in themselves again." He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, "That's exactly why I want to do this with you." By the following week, the partnership was in motion. Her nonprofit team was stunned. Plans were drawn, meetings scheduled. Frost Tech's legal department was working around the clock to structure it right, and yet, even with the growing momentum, Brielle kept one thing guarded: her heart. Because for all of Walter's generosity and charm, she couldn't shake a single, overwhelming fear. What if she was just another project? Another cause he could check off and feel good about? She didn't want to be someone's brief fascination. She wanted to matter. So the next time they met, this time for dinner at a tiny Italian place he said reminded him of a trip to Florence, she didn't dodge the question. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked, eyes steady on his. He didn't look away. "Because I trust you. And I don't trust easily." "That's not an answer." He set down his fork. "I've built a life surrounded by people who want something from me. Influence, money, power, but you, the first time we met, you didn't care who I was. You cared about what was right. That doesn't mean you know me." "I want to." She took a breath. "And when you do," he leaned forward slightly, "then I'll decide if I'm brave enough to fall." Her pulse skipped, but she didn't let it show. Instead, she picked up her wine glass and clinked it gently against his, to bravery. He smiled, not the polished public one, a real one, and in that moment, Brielle knew this wasn't just a project, it was the beginning of something dangerously real. Walter stood on the helipad of the Frost Tech Tower, the wind tugging at his coat as the blades of the idling helicopters sliced the air. It was barely past 6 in the morning, but he had already been awake for hours. He usually ran on precision time blocks, alerts, tightly managed priorities, but for the past week, none of it stuck. His calendar was full, his inbox overflowing, but everything kept circling back to her. He knew how to build systems that scaled globally. He didn't know how to navigate the way his chest tightened every time he thought of Brielle's voice. "Push the quarterly forecast to tomorrow," he said into his headset. "Tell legal I'll sign the nonprofit contract myself." No back and forth. As the chopper lifted into the sky, the city fell away beneath him, and for the first time in days, he allowed himself to think about what had been gnawing at him. It wasn't just that he wanted to be near her. It was the way she made him want to be better, not sharper. Not stronger, just honest. He wasn't used to that. Later that afternoon, Walter walked into a modest co-working space on the east side of the city where Brielle's nonprofit had moved into its new temporary headquarters. He didn't bring an assistant, no entourage. Just him, in a navy shirt rolled at the sleeves and charcoal slacks he rarely wore without a tie. As he stepped inside, he caught the tail end of her voice from down the hall. "We don't need bigger yet. What we need is consistency. If we can't support 5 clients, we can't support 50. She was standing in front of a whiteboard, hair pulled back into a messy knot, a pencil behind one ear and a spreadsheet in her hand. Her team surrounded her 3 women and 1 man, all focused, all clearly listening to her. He didn't interrupt. He waited by the glass wall until she noticed him. When she did, she didn't smile. "Give me 5, she said to the room, then stepped into the hall with him, folding her arms. "You're early," she said. "You're excellent with a whiteboard. I'm also busy." "I can see that," she sighed. "You didn't call first. I didn't think I needed to." "Walter, you can't just drop in like this." He studied her. "You used to show up in boardrooms uninvited, and you used to be a terrifying mystery. Now you're just a man who thinks the world adjusts to him." He paused, then nodded once. "Fair." She leaned against the wall, arms still crossed. "Why are you here?" "I thought we could have lunch. I brought leftovers." "I didn't." She looked at him, trying not to smile. "You're impossible. And yet, here you are still talking to me." She shook her head. "Fine, 15 minutes. There's a food truck 2 blocks down. It's fried and greasy and smells like sin." He followed her outside. The sidewalk was crowded and the winter air bit at their cheeks. They walked close, not quite touching, but not far apart either. Brielle ordered something called a chaos dog, a hot dog buried under jalapenos, crushed chips, and what looked like 3 different sauces. Walter raised a brow but said nothing as he accepted his own, much tamer grilled chicken wrap. They sat on a bench tucked between 2 storefronts, steam from the food rising between them. "You're quiet," she said after a moment. "I've been thinking, dangerous." He glanced at her. "I want to take you away for a weekend," she blinked. "Excuse me?" "Just us. No phones, no press, no Frost Tech, just you, me, and somewhere quiet." She laughed, short and disbelieving. "I run a nonprofit and a bakery." "I don't have weekends." "I'll make sure you do. And why would I agree to that?" "Because I haven't stopped thinking about you since the day you walked into that boardroom." She stared at him, her expression unreadable. "You don't know how to slow down." "I'm learning." She took a bite of her chaos dog and chewed thoughtfully. "Where?" "There's a place in the Catskills, private, isolated, no Wi-Fi unless you want it, fireplaces, hiking trails, a piano." She looked at him carefully. "You're not doing this to impress me, are you?" "No, I'm doing it because I want to know what your laugh sounds like when you're not worried about saving the world." She stood suddenly, throwing her napkin in a nearby trash bin. "I'll think about it." Walter didn't push. He just stood beside her as they walked back. That night, her message came through his assistant. 2 nights, no press, no business talk, and she was bringing her own car. He grinned. The cabin was nothing like she expected. It wasn't massive or overly sleek. It was warm, with weathered wood beams, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a fireplace that took up half the main wall. She arrived at dusk and found him already there, chopping vegetables in the kitchen. "You cook?" she asked, setting her overnight bag by the door. "I do a lot of things." "You just haven't asked the right questions yet." They made dinner together: salmon, roasted squash, and a bottle of wine he uncorked with surprising ease. No servants, no schedules, just the two of them, alone. Afterward, they played an old vinyl record from a box in the corner and sat by the fire. "You haven't asked me a single question about the nonprofit," she said. "I said no business talk." "I didn't think you were capable of restraint." "I'm not." He met her eyes. "But I'm trying, for you." She turned slightly, watching the flames. "No one's ever done that before. Changed, I mean." "Not like this." "Then they didn't want you badly enough." She didn't respond, but she didn't move away either. Later that night, as rain tapped against the cabin roof and the fire burned low, he found her standing on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket. "It's quiet here," she murmured. "That's the point. I didn't realize how much noise I carry around." He stepped beside her. "You don't have to carry it alone." She looked at him, her expression open in a way it had never been before. "You make it so easy to believe you mean everything you say." "I do. But what happens when it gets hard? When I say something you don't want to hear, when I don't agree with you, then we talk," he said simply. "We figure it out." She touched his chest lightly, just above his heart. "You terrify me." "Likewise." They kissed again, slower this time, not a rooftop moment, not a gala fantasy. Just two people standing in the cold, learning how to want each other without fear. The next morning, she beat him to the kitchen. "You make coffee?" he asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "I own a bakery. Do you breathe?" He chuckled, then leaned against the counter. "I could get used to this." She stirred sugar into her mug. "Don't get comfortable too fast." "I'm not," but he was, dangerously. That afternoon, they hiked a narrow trail behind the cabin, ending at a small, frozen lake. She threw a snowball at him before he could finish a sentence. He retaliated instantly, and soon they were both laughing, breathless, covered in powder. As the sun dipped low, she brushed snow from her hair and looked at him, cheeks flushed. "What happens when we go back?" she asked. "We deal with it," he said. "Together. Even if people start talking, let them." She hesitated. "I don't want to be your weakness." He stepped closer. "You're not. You're my reason." And in that moment, she believed him, completely, but they both knew real life was waiting, and it wasn't going to wait quietly. Brielle stood in front of the bakery's back counter, sleeves rolled, hands deep in dough, but her head wasn't here. It hadn't been all week. Every time she blinked, she saw the way Walter had looked at her before they left the cabin. There hadn't been any grand declarations, just a quiet certainty in his eyes, like he'd already decided something and wasn't waiting for her permission to feel it. She couldn't deny it anymore. He'd gotten under her skin. Not with gifts or big gestures, though he'd made more than a few, but with the way he listened, the way he challenged her, the way he never tried to fix her, only to stand beside her while she fixed things for herself. But that didn't mean she wasn't scared, and that fear had pulled tighter ever since they got back. The city didn't feel the same. Nothing did. She wiped her hands on a towel as a knock sounded at the side door. It wasn't a customer entrance. Only a few people even knew it existed. When she opened it, Walter stood there, wind tugging at his coat, a single sheet of paper in his hand. "You're early," she said, stepping aside. "I couldn't wait." She shut the door behind him, catching the faint smell of his cologne, something warm, expensive, and completely unique to him. "What's that?" she asked, nodding to the paper. "An invitation," he said, offering it to her. She took it and scanned the page. It wasn't glossy or corporate, it was printed simply, her nonprofit's logo at the top. It was a press announcement scheduled to go out the next morning. He'd made the partnership official, fully funded, fully public, with her listed not as a beneficiary but a partner. "I wanted you to see it before anyone else did," he said. She looked up. "You're giving us a seat at the table, not just handouts." "That matters. I told you I don't do things halfway." She folded the paper and set it aside. "There's something I need to ask you." "Go on." "If you're serious about this about me, then I need to know this isn't a phase. That you're not going to wake up one day and realize I don't fit into your world." "I already realized that," he said. Her stomach dropped. But I don't want someone who fits into my world, he continued. I want someone who makes me want to build a new one. She crossed her arms, not out of defiance, but because she didn't know what else to do with her hands. I don't know what to do when someone talks like that. Then don't do anything. Just let me keep showing up. She hesitated, then stepped forward. You've been patient. I'm not patient. I'm determined, she exhaled. Doesn't scare you that we come from completely different planets? It used to. Now it excites me. He reached for her hand and she let him take it. I don't want to date you in the shadows, he said. I want to walk into a room with you and not care who sees. She didn't let go. Then do it. He leaned in, but before he could kiss her, a door opened behind them. Am I interrupting? Her father asked, wiping flour off his hands. Walter straightened. Not at all. Peter raised an eyebrow. You're the Frost guy, right? Finch, yes. Peter gave a nod that was more of a silent warning than a welcome. You break her heart, I'll put cayenne in your morning pastry. Walter's mouth twitched. Understood, Brielle groaned. Dad, nope, don't defend him yet. Let's see if he earns it. After her father disappeared into the kitchen, Walter turned back to her. I like him, he said. He's impossible. I'm used to impossible. They spent the next few days preparing for the official launch event. It wasn't a gala. No tuxes or orchestras. Just a community center, folding chairs, and a crowd of people who believed in second chances. Walter showed up in a navy sweater and dark slacks. No security, no spotlight. And when Brielle took the stage to speak, he sat in the front row, not as a CEO, but as someone who believed in her. Afterward, as the crowd thinned and volunteers packed up tables, she found him outside, watching the sky shift from dusk to night. You did well in there, he said. I didn't faint, so I'm calling it a win. He turned toward her, his expression unreadable for a moment. There's something else I want to do, she raised a brow. You just handed my nonprofit a 6-figure boost. What's left? This. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small navy box. Her heart stilled. Before you panic, he said, opening it slowly. It's not what you think. Inside wasn't a ring. It was a key to what? A space down the street from here. 2 floors, already zoned for food service and community programs. I bought it yesterday. She stared. Why? Because you said you wanted to open another bakery, one that mattered, one with purpose. Now you can. She shook her head, overwhelmed. You can't just, I'm not giving it to you, I'm offering it. As your partner, your equal, I'll fund the renovation, but you run it. Your way, she bit her lip. And if I say no, then I'll still show up tomorrow and the day after, because I'm not in this for convenience, I'm in it for you. The wind picked up, pulling a strand of hair across her cheek. He reached up and tucked it gently behind her ear. I didn't fall for you because you challenged me, he said. I fell for you because you never wanted anything from me but truth. She blinked fast. I'm not afraid of love, Walter. I'm afraid of losing myself inside it. Then don't. Stay exactly who you are. That's who I love. She froze. You said it. I meant it. He didn't try to kiss her. He just let the words hang there, and this time she was the one who stepped forward. I love you too, she whispered. God help me. He pulled her into his arms, and for the first time there was no hesitation between them, no questions. No waiting, just an answer. Weeks passed. The second bakery location opened quietly under her name. Walter didn't take credit. He didn't even show up to the ribbon cutting. He stood across the street, watching with quiet pride. The nonprofit expanded too. Her team doubled, and women who'd been told they'd never get another chance were walking through doors she helped build. And one evening, in the middle of a slow dinner on his penthouse terrace, she turned to him. You know what the worst part is? She asked, sipping wine. What? I don't miss the quiet anymore. I used to crave it. Now I crave this. He reached across the table, taking her hand. I used to think love made you soft, but it doesn't. Not with you. It makes me sharper. It makes me better. She smiled. I liked when you were boring. It made me feel superior. He laughed. You still are. I'm just lucky you let me catch up. And as the city glowed beneath them, she leaned into his side, heart full in a way she'd never known before. He wasn't boring, not anymore, and she wasn't alone, not ever again. The sound of applause echoed through the converted warehouse space, bouncing off exposed brick walls and high vaulted ceilings strung with lights. The second location of the bakery, the one Brielle had once only dreamed about, was now officially open. Not with a ribbon cutting or a press release, but with a community celebration that felt like home. There were no suits in sight, no media. Just the women who now worked there, the people from the neighborhood, and the smell of cinnamon rolls wafting from the ovens. Brielle stood near the back, watching one of the new hires, a single mother named Lacey, hand a cupcake to a little girl who couldn't have been more than 5. The girl's eyes lit up in a way that made Brielle's throat tighten, because that was what this place was about, not profits, not prestige, but possibility. Walter stood near the espresso counter, sleeves rolled up, laughing quietly as he failed to figure out the milk steamer. One of the baristas took pity on him and showed him how to angle the pitcher. He listened, nodded, and tried again. The foam still looked like a science experiment, but he handed her the cup with exaggerated pride. When he spotted Brielle across the room, he didn't wave, he didn't call out. He just walked toward her, weaving through the crowd like he'd always belonged here. "You're glowing," he said once he reached her. She tilted her head. "That's sweat. I've been running around for 3 hours. No, it's glow, trust me." She reached up and adjusted the collar of his shirt. "You look like a man who just lost a fight with an espresso machine." I did. But I gained perspective. "Oh yeah, turns out I'm not good at everything." Shocking, he leaned in slightly. "You know what I am good at? Enlighten me. Knowing when I've found the one thing that makes everything else make sense." She folded her arms, heart already racing. "You're getting sentimental again. I'm allowed. It's a big day." "Don't propose to me in the middle of a bakery opening," she warned, narrowing her eyes. "I swear if you pull out a velvet box, I will throw you into the industrial mixer," he laughed. "Relax, no box." "Not today," she eyed him warily. "Good." Instead of pulling out anything, he took both her hands. "But I do want to talk about something, okay? I've been offered a position on the board of a global education initiative. It would mean a lot of travel, a lot of time away from Frost Tech." From the city, her stomach dipped. "Where are we going with this?" "I want you to come with me, not to every country or conference, but to the parts that matter, the launches, the schools, the women we're helping train with your nonprofit's model. I want to integrate what you've built into what I'm building next." She stared at him, brain struggling to catch up. "Are you saying you want to merge our missions?" "I'm saying I want to merge everything. My work, my time, my life." She searched his face. "You're not the merger type. I wasn't. Until I met someone who made me want to build something I couldn't do alone." Her eyes softened. "Walter, I can't live out of a suitcase. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to help design the blueprint. We'll keep the nonprofits here running strong. We'll bring in more leadership. But I want the next phase to be ours, not just mine." She was quiet for a long moment. "Then I want to be a part of it, as long as I still get to bake. You can bake in Paris or Johannesburg or back here every other month. I'll build the schedule around you." She smiled slowly. "You're serious?" "I've never been more serious about anything." She reached up and touched his face, thumb grazing the corner of his mouth. "Then let's do it, but you have to promise me one thing, anything. No matter where we go, we always come back here, this city, this community. This bakery, it's home." He nodded. "Always." The rest of the night passed in a blur of laughter, music, and too many sweets. Brielle danced with her father to an old jazz recording playing through the speakers. Walter watched from across the room, arms folded, a rare softness in his eyes. After the last cupcake was boxed, the last guest hugged goodbye and the building quieted. Walter helped her lock the doors. The street outside was dark and still, the kind of peaceful you only got at the end of something joyful. She leaned against the glass, arms wrapped around herself. "You know, if someone had told me a few months ago that I'd be running 2 bakeries, directing a nonprofit, and planning international outreach with a tech billionaire, I would have laughed them out of the room." He stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "And if someone had told me I'd be standing outside a bakery in a $300 shirt covered in powdered sugar, completely in love with a woman who once threatened to handcuff herself to my reception desk, I would have had them removed from the building." She laughed, turning in his arms. "You really love me." "I do, even when I'm stubborn, especially then. Even when I challenge everything you say." He kissed her forehead. "That's the best part." She tilted her head up. "Then marry me." He blinked. "Wait, are you serious?" "I told you not to do it first." "I never said I wouldn't." His mouth curved into the kind of smile that made her stomach flip. Yes, he said. Absolutely yes. They didn't wait long. There were no save the dates, no seating charts, just close friends, her father beaming in the front row, and a rooftop ceremony at twilight. She wore a satin dress with sleeves that fluttered in the wind. He wore a gray suit, tie gone by the time they hit the dance floor. Walter's vows were short but honest. I built companies. You built people, and now we're building us. I didn't know I could feel this whole until I met you. Brielle's were even shorter. I thought I knew who I was, but you showed me who I could be, and I love that version of me because she gets to love you. They kissed as the sun dipped below the skyline, cheers rising around them. The next year was a whirlwind. They launched programs in 5 cities. Her bakery expanded to include a culinary training kitchen for formerly incarcerated women. Walter stepped away from daily operations at Frost Tech to focus on global impact work. They traveled to Nairobi, Lisbon, Seoul, and always came back to their apartment in Brooklyn with the creaky floorboards and the too small kitchen. They didn't try to balance everything. They chose what mattered and let the rest fall away. One night, curled on the couch with her head on his chest and a half-eaten box of cookies between them, she whispered, "I never thought I'd be this happy." Walter ran his fingers through her hair. "I didn't know I was capable of it." She looked up. "Do you think it'll last?" He kissed the top of her head. "It already has." Because real love wasn't a fairy tale, it was a choice, every day to believe in someone, to show up, to grow, and every time she looked at him, Brielle knew she had made the right one.